Welcome to episode 6 of Shadow Support Systems Tech Tips. This is where we're going to continue to discuss hot topics in the IT world. As a disclaimer, as of all of my episodes that I put out there, this information is not for your residential experts, someone who's been in IT for years. This information is meant to educate and help out people who want to know more, just your entry-level employees or average employee in general, or just a private citizen who wants to take security a little step further and understand more about what they're doing. What I'm trying to accomplish is just try to educate people with factual information and protect them as much as possible. It's our duty to protect our families, and it doesn't just stop with the physical aspect of it. We need to protect our data, protect our information, and also protect our finances. It's very important that we do so. Without further ado, we're going to discuss an introduction to social engineering. Full disclosure, this episode may be a little bit longer than my prior videos. I just want to put enough information out there. I don't want to get too granular with it. I don't want to kill you with all these 75 different definitions and go into a 5-minute spiel about each. So I want to do a little bit better job about getting the information out there, but make sure it's concise and accurate. Accuracy matters. Bad information helps no one. So social engineering is a manipulation technique that exploits human behavior and psychology to gain access to sensitive information or systems. It often involves tricking people into revealing confidential data or performing actions that compromise security. It goes way more in depth than that because there are lots of examples of that. But again, like I said, I want to keep this concise but give you enough information to help you to protect your data and your information, because your information is and should be held secure at all times, no matter where that information resides. The definition is the art of manipulating people into divulging confidential information or performing actions that compromise security. There is a multitude of information this could entail. So the confidential information could be passwords. It could be a route, like a route of driving if you are a certain type of delivery driver. It could be if you do Garda World or any of these companies that transport money. That information of your route could be very useful to someone that's trying to take advantage or rob them, right? So information is super valuable. It doesn't really matter to someone. It wouldn't. Some people, it doesn't matter what information is out there, but it should, because that information can be used against you in a lot of ways. That's why I kind of push everybody to be very cautious on social media. So the scope, social engineering attacks target the human element of security rather than technical vulnerabilities. This is for people who are not, don't get me wrong, hackers do this, right? But they're not like let's say a Ryan Montgomery. So Ryan Montgomery is a fantastic, now ethical hacker. He wasn't always a good guy, but he has been for quite a while now. Recommend you viewing his material. He does a lot to try to be a big proponent for kids and home security, right? So the scope can be executed through a variety of tactics, both offline and online. So the primary goal of social engineering are to gain unauthorized access, steal sensitive data, or influence the target to perform acts that benefit the attacker. So it's basically, in a very, very minimized nutshell, manipulation, right? So manipulation and trying to get information that person didn't really, they didn't need that information. They weren't supposed to have it, but they were able to gain that information through a process. So the psychological principles exploited in social engineering: authority. Attackers often impersonate figures of authority to gain trust and compliance from the victims. One popular use of this is the Social Security scam, where someone calls you and says, hey, we're from the Social Security Administration. We need you to verify your Social Security number and some other information. That's a problem, right? So if they're not a legitimate agency, and that's not what usually happens on the phone anyway, these government entities have put out notice after notice that saying that we're not going to call you and talk to you about this. But people still fall for it, right? Because it's coming from a sense of authority. This person knows who they are, and they know me, and they know that I need to provide this information. So they influence by authority. 2 is social proof. It exploits the human tendency to follow the crowd and conform to social norms. Well, it's kind of the thing you were taught as a kid. Well, if Johnny jumped off a bridge, you're going to jump off a bridge too. It's a very crazy example, but that is a human tendency. People follow what everybody does, and they conform to social norms, right? So that's what happens. But as you grow up and you mature and you have a family and you have positions of responsibility, you have to understand that just because everybody else does it doesn't mean that you should do it. So number 3 is scarcity, creating a sense of urgency or limited availability to pressure victims into hasty decisions. I always compare this to like a used car salesman, right? So I've had this happen to me, about 8 to 10 years ago. I was looking for a specific truck, and they're like, oh, by the way, that truck you called about, someone's here looking at it right now. They wanted to create a sense of urgency for me to hurry up and get down there and buy that truck. Now, it's a crazy example again, but it's a way that some of these social engineering hackers or these attackers can use your sense of urgency to encourage you to do something, right? Like make a decision on the spot that you wouldn't normally do, right? So number 4 is reciprocity, right? So basically offering a favor or gift to create a feeling of obligation to the target or in the target. If you do this for me, I'll do this for you. And that's problematic because, it's scratch your back, I'll scratch yours, but often their favor or gift is, what's the word I'm looking for? With bad intention, right? So no one's going to typically give you something for free or as a favor unless it's someone that you know and respect, right? So usually I always kind of assume that there's an alternative motivation for their generosity. And so unfortunately that's the world we live in, where we have to think as someone, as they're doing something nice, why are they doing something nice? That's a concern, right? Common technical engineering or social engineering tactics and techniques: phishing, pretexting, and baiting. So I'm going to do an entire episode on phishing and spoofing because I think that they're very well closely related. But phishing, as far as this goes, is defined as sending fraudulent emails or messages to trick victims into revealing sensitive information or performing actions. One of the most common is the gift card scam, where your quote-unquote CEO of your company, who does not email you normally or about something like this, says, I need you to go get gift cards for a client of ours, and don't tell anybody, it's a secret. I want it to be a surprise. And so most people catch on to that. However, it's still a pretty common threat. So I've known people that have fallen for this. I've known companies that have fallen for this. And so some of them have caught it and been able to reverse transactions, or they will stop before they provide the gift card information to the threat, but it's a common issue. Pretexting is fabricating a plausible scenario to manipulate the target into providing confidential data or access. Sometimes this can be done when you act as someone's cellular carrier. Like if they pretend they're Verizon or Spectrum or whoever your cable/internet provider is, and they try to give you an opportunity to give them information that you shouldn't be giving them. This is another reason to be very cautious about what's placed on social media. Baiting, leaving malware-infected physical media, USB hard drives, SD cards, spare hard drives external hard drives that plug in via USB, micro or USB otherwise, in a public place to entice the target to use them. So you would think someone would be absolutely crazy to pick up a flash drive that they don't know where it came from and just shove it in their computer. However, people do that. It's wild that they do it, but nonetheless, they do it. So I don't know how successful that went as far as the actual statistics go. That's not something that I've personally had to deal with, fortunately enough, but it does happen, so I need to mention it. So the impact of social engineering on cybersecurity is huge. It is massive. Data breaches, unauthorized access, and financial losses go hand in hand. Social engineering attacks could lead to the theft of sensitive data, such as login credentials, financial information, and trade secrets. It's not just about money. In the beginning, right? Login credentials are a key that they use to get to money, but trade secrets, there's a lot of things associated with that. Corporate espionage, financial information can be costly because it depends on who they're able to get to, especially retired individuals, which seem to be a very high target threshold for these people. They will look for people who are retired because they're much more naive, right? Well, they're just trying to help me. Unauthorized access: attackers can use social engineering to gain access to restricted systems, networks, or physical facilities. I tried this, when I was in college, right? So it talked about being able to get information from someone without being allowed to have that information, right? So gaining unauthorized information and access without, legally requiring it, right? So I did this in college. You're able to ask people questions that are really nonchalant, but then you can get information in that process that can help you accomplish a task. And so it's something that everybody should learn on. And I'm really super surprised that a lot of companies don't put that information out there. Financial losses are typically tied. I mean, it's successful social engineering attacks can result in financial losses, typically through fraud, theft, or the cost of incident response and recovery. Incident response and recovery is massively expensive, thousands and thousands of dollars. That's why insurance, cyber insurance, not even just general liability or professional liability, but cyber insurance is ridiculous because of this. People have to have that if they deal with people's technological, infrastructure, and even if they don't, if they deal with personal data, they got to have some type of protection in place, which of course is followed by like a privacy policy. Like one of my clients that I have recently, I had to implement a privacy policy because they were accepting payments on a website, right? So we want to make sure that anybody given that information, that the information is protected and taken care of. So real world examples of successful social engineering attacks: the 2016 Democratic National Committee email hack, which led to the release of sensitive information. Hacking email is super popular because it's not really difficult to do. Social engineering is a way to do it. Phishing specifically, where you send someone an email saying, "I'm your boss, I need this information," or they send you an email that has a link in it that's questionable, but because it looks like it appears to come from your boss, then you click on the link and it asks you for your password, and a lot of people type that information in. I've watched that happen to an extent where the guy's email account was completely compromised, and then he took that email account and sent the vice president of accounting an email and said, "Hey, change my pay information. I know my paycheck's coming in a couple days. I changed bank accounts. I want to make sure I don't miss it getting paid." And so that individual made that change. And so that's hugely an issue because, our accounting professionals are already overworked, underpaid, right? So they're always constantly doing something every day, all day, because there's typically a small group of them for a massive organization. So they're overworked, they're tired. So these mistakes are easy to be made. And also there's the misinformation, right? Or the lack of information. They don't know to be super picky about that stuff. They don't know that there's no policy in place. I don't say they don't know, but there's no policy in place stating that person needs to contact a person verbally to verify. They're under the impression, sometimes the assumption, that this email came from such and such at theircompanydomain.com, that it looks legit, it has their email signature, has all the right information. I'll just do this for them because I know them. And so that's happened. I've watched it happen, and it's tough because you have to get ahead of it. You have to contact banks. You have to make sure payment doesn't go through this individual. And the banks have the ability to go through and say, "Look, we looked into this. This accounting and routing number does not exist in the United States. This is coming from another country of origin. So we're not going to make this change." And so the banking institution has become more aggressive because they don't want to get caught on hook for the money either. So they don't want to have to come up with that money outside of normal situations. They don't want to have to give that money back to you. So they are much more aggressive with prosecuting this stuff and finding those issues. Pretexting the 2011 Societe Generale Bank fraud, where an attacker impersonated the bank's chairman to transfer funds. This isn't all too uncommon, unfortunately. It's very simple to impersonate someone, especially if you don't have to do it in person. And so listening to a couple of phone calls from that person, you could, mimic their approach. You could also have information that you're not supposed to have to be able to authenticate that transaction and that conversation. So for baiting the 2016 breach of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, where infected USB drives were left in government buildings. And so government employees are a whole different batch of folks. A lot of them now are trained on these. On phishing attacks, spoofing, pretexting, baiting. They are trained on all these things, but not all the time. So, and also I'm not just picking on government employees, because I'm not at all. I know a lot of them. So, but they're trained on this stuff, but that doesn't mean that they're always expecting it. So again, could be an example of overworked, underpaid, constantly stressed out. I know some of our Fed guys are, work pretty thin. So the idea is that you pay attention when this training is given to you, because you never know when you may need it. And so I get phishing attacks every day sent to me, sent to my company email. It's super annoying, but through rules and some things that you can change on the back end, that's limited a lot of that. Now I just get spam trying to get me to pay for services, which I don't need. So So, mitigating strategies and best practices, security awareness training, educating employees to recognize and respond to social engineering attempts. I made that very clear off the get go as the training is required. Like, it's surprising to me that a lot of companies don't offer this training voluntarily. Like, something has to happen for them to implement it, and that's crazy. I mean, especially if you're a multi-million-dollar organization, even if it's just for your personal finances, get some type of training, get some type of awareness. I offer it through my company. I will go through to a company, and small, medium-sized business, I'll go in. Even the large businesses, doesn't matter to me. I can come in and provide PowerPoints of this information, provide some examples, and then I can also send some test emails into the organization to test them and see who falls for it, who doesn't. A lot of people look at that the wrong way. It looks like they're trying to attack their employees. They're not. It needs to come from where your heart is, right? My heart is in helping people. I want to make sure that you are as protected as possible. So when I'm doing that, it's not a gotcha trick. It is a, hey, look, man, you clicked on this. I need to know why you clicked on it. I need to know what you didn't pay attention to, or if you just assumed it was legitimate. And so that's problematic in today's world because there's so much out there that's just not legitimate, right? Multi-factor authentication. Back in one of my episodes, I talked about password selection. Multi-factor authentication is super important. Implementing strong authentication controls to prevent unauthorized access. Multi-factor authentication is an added step and a layer of protection on top of your password that should be strong to begin with. We talked about a minimum of 14 letters or characters, characters being symbols, capital letters, lowercase letters, and numbers as well, using phrasing or a prefix and a suffix in addition to the phrasing and changing some letters for numbers, etc. So the multi-factor authentication is basically where you type in a password somewhere, you click submit or log in, and then it sends you a text message or an authentication code to whether it be Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, etc., etc. There's a lot of them out there. So that is, and it can be beaten for sure. So it's just a mitigation strategy, right? Consider best practice. It used to be that multi-factor authentication was not the standard. Today, in today's world, is very much the standard. So I would highly recommend a multi-factor authentication setup for no matter what you're logging into. Doesn't matter if you have Facebook, doesn't matter if it's Twitter or X or whatever it's being called today. Doesn't matter, right? So multi-factor authentication is a standard, not a perk anymore. It used to be a perk. Now it's just the standard. Incident response planning. Develop clear protocols for reporting and responding to social engineering incidents. This should not just include trying to punish an employee, especially if that employee or person is not really savvy or knowledgeable on the tactics used. It should be used as an education, right? So incident response can be quite expensive, but the more money you spend up front, the more effort you apply to teaching someone, instructing them what not to do, it pays dividends on the back end. I've watched people trained on this, and then something happened, and they came back to me and later said, I did not click on that link because I listened to you. And so that makes me feel really good because you can save someone a lot of heartache and trauma because, if you go to check your bank account and it's got nothing in it, that's a life changer, right? I mean, not everybody is super wealthy enough to where if they lose a couple $1,000s, it won't change their life. Like, that's not how everybody lives. So incident response planning is hugely important, even on the personal citizen side of things. Let's do the right thing. Let's get educated. Let's take information from credible sources. You don't have to take it from me. I don't care where you get the legitimate information. If you want to go look at the SANS Institute, or if you want to go read the NIST documentation from the federal government, if you want to read any of those, by all means, have at it. You're going to be really bored really quick, but there's a lot of information in there. And so a lot of the things that I teach companies and teach people is derived from that information. I just try to put it in a consumable format that doesn't, kill you with boredom. So in conclusion, some key takeaways. It is a human-centric threat. And so what I mean by that is social engineering exploits the human element of security, making it a persistent and evolving threat. I can secure a network very well, right? But the security of the network really doesn't matter if someone inside that organization is compromised and willing to participate, right? So it's crazy, right? So it's very important for us to take that information and guard that information that we have internally, guard your financial information. guard all of this information and keep it in a secure place. Comprehensive approach is number 2. Addressing social engineering requires a combination of technical controls, which someone like me would, somebody like me would do. Implementing a password policy, implementing some network controls on what sites you can access and not access. Putting some type of advanced threat protection in the email situation at the tenant. All of those things can be done. Those are technical controls, and of course, there's administrative controls too, where we can train people, right? Teach people what to do. An incident response training. All of that comes down to getting a reputable source, reputable person, source, company, whatever, coming in, teaching you and your employees how to do it the right way. And I do this on the residential side too. Like I'll go in and evaluate a situation and give people advice on based off of my expert opinion and my experience and what I've experienced in the last 12, 13 years in IT. And I can teach people, to avoid these problems, ongoing vigilance, staying informed about latest social engineering tactics and continuously improving defenses is crucial. It is an evolving threat. Every day, the bad guys come out with something bigger and better, and the good guys have to counter it. That's how the world works. However, there are certain things that are always paramount. They're always uniform. And that is, I don't give information to people that I don't know. And I ask questions, always. Asking questions is always the right step. But whenever someone calls with these, we're from the Social Security Organization. No, you're not. You're not from the Social Security Administration. They don't call me. They're going to mail me something with an official letterhead, with a location that I can go to and talk to someone about that issue, right? So the IRS stuff was one of the big ones too, where they were saying, if you don't pay us this, we're going to come take your house. And so a lot of people fell for it because everybody fears the IRS. So, as they should. So it's one of those things where people, they are able to capitalize off of fear of situations to get information from you. And so what I will leave you with today is that be very cautious about what you post on social media. A lot of people post a lot of pictures of their children, their ages, like even down to the month. And so I don't do that stuff, nor do I ever post information about my children online. I really can't even think the last photo I had of my children on social media is probably from 10 years ago. Because people will use that information to haunt you. And so if you have pictures of your kids and how old they are, a lot of security questions with sources online, they ask you, well, how many children do you have? What are their ages? What's your eldest son's birth date? And so if someone is willing to go through the task of looking you up on social media and going through your posts, they're going to be able to find out that information relatively quickly. Wedding anniversaries, birth dates, social security information. A lot of people post that information online. And so that's crazy, right? But they don't think anything about it because, well, I'm just posting my baby online. This is my child that was born yesterday. Well, now I know how old your child is and I know when they were born. So now that information's very beneficial to me. I'm not the kind of guy that would use that information, but people put it out there all the time. And so be vigilant. It is a constant process to keep someone else away from what you've worked hard to attain. And so social media is I keep it for business. I use it for Facebook Marketplace to buy car parts that my wife hates. But you know what? I don't put personal information out there because people don't need to have it. So be very cautious about that. Be vigilant. I can always be contacted at support@shadowsupportsystems.com. Please send me an email. My information's online, shadowsupportsystems.com. You can go there. I've got a button where you can click for support. You can also send me an email. You can give me a call. I'm always happy to help, especially with this type of stuff because I love helping our residents and our citizens keep their information safe. But if you have any issues about any current things that you're experiencing, the Microsoft pop-ups that are not Microsoft, that someone from India is going to answer the phone and try to take over your machine. That's a common thing that happens. I deal with that pretty often. Just reach out. I'm happy to help. Our services are cost effective. They are not what many would consider very expensive, but in this world, you get what you pay for, right? So, I compare everything to the market, but I do like to always under promise and over deliver. So give us a shout out. Again, thank you so much for your time today. If you have any questions, reach out. Other than that, make it a great day.